Hello my lovelies, hope everybody's okay. It's only Grandma Kimmy here. Thought I'd come on and we could have a little bit of another read of the book, Mattie. Now I'll just read the last little bit so you know where we got to. During their 4th week of life, they lived on a mixed diet of slugs, snails, centipedes, woodlice and other small creatures which their mother brought to them. She still suckled them at intervals and would continue to do so until the end of their 5th or 6th week, but her milk was already beginning to dry up. The boar showed less and less interest in his family and spent more and more time away from the nest. Often he did not sleep there for 2 or 3 days at a time. He was very old hedgehog, of some 5 or 6 summers, and he quickly forgot about his family in the excitement of hunting in the short summer nights. He needed a lot of food to maintain his bulk. He weighed over 2 pounds. He was old enough and crafty enough to lie in wait for field mice outside their holes and to steal an occasional bird's egg. He had weathered so many winters and seen so much of man that he was afraid of very little. Each year he fathered a family, and each year he regarded them with interest and surprise for a few weeks and then forgot all about them. His former mate had died of pneumonia during their winter hibernation, and his present mate was much younger than he. They differed widely from each other. She had dark brown, shiny bristles, a small black head, and fur-covered legs, which he had gizzled fawn and black, striped head with a prominent ears. His legs were worn bald, and he had splay feet with 5-toed claws. His bristles were faded and dusty. The boar had found a garden in which milk was left out each night. He did not know that when he first raided the cat saucer, the owner of the garden saw him approaching in the half-light and mistook him for a rat. The man had run through his .22 rifle, which hung ready loaded on the wall, but the hedgehog had felt the vibration of his footsteps and had slunk into cover. For several evenings the man had looked for the rat in the moonlight, but he did not see it. Then one evening his wife looked out of the kitchen window, saw the hedgehog at the cat saucer. He was clearly outlined against the white dish and could easily be recognised. These people had always wanted a hedgehog, for they knew it would clear the garden of pests, so they put out bread and milk while the hedgehog came each evening to eat and drink. The boar ranged over several gardens during the night, but his mate always hunted near the nest. As the young hedgehogs grew stronger, their mother found them less and less easy to control. On one occasion, Mattie was missing when she returned to the nest. She nuzzled the other 2 youngsters and tried to settle down with them, but could not because of her sense of loss. At midday, she could stand it no longer, and she climbed from her nest, her nose to the ground, following the scent of Mattie. For a long time she ran fruitlessly up and down the lane, keeping in the shadow of the hedge. Once she saw a man and froze in her tracks, but her anxiety for Mattie was so great that she did not curl up. She waited with her brows wrinkled over her eyes and her spine slightly tensed, her legs bent and her snout tucked down until the man had passed by. He did not notice her, and she ran on. Prying into a patch of nettles and long grass, eventually she found herself in the milk and bread garden, and there she found Mattie. The little hedgehog had crept out of the nest during the night and had played by herself until morning. Dew and the morning mist had chilled her, and she felt cold and hungry, but she had wandered so far from home that she could not find her way back. She had run further and further, with her nose to the ground trying to pick up her own scent, but she had become hopelessly confused. At last she had settled down exhausted to sleep in the sunshine. Although hedgehogs are now nocturnal animals, many thousands of years ago, when men were fewer and there were no vehicles, they hunted freely by day and by night. Even now, a young hedgehog is grateful for the warmth of the sun and loves to bask in it. Just before her mother arrived, somebody had come to pick strawberries, and Mattie, awakened suddenly by the footsteps, had fled, shrieking down the path. The woman picking the strawberries had thought that the thin, high shrieks must have come from a wounded bird. But Mattie's mother knew her cries. Grunting and scolding, she collected her erring baby and shepherded it back to the nest. She removed a couple of ticks from among Mattie's prickles and gave the little hedgehog quite a vicious shake with her teeth before they settled down to sleep. Picture of Mattie, Mummy and the babies. Mattie was by far the most adventurous of the young hedgehogs. In their 5th week, their mother took them with her to hunt by the light of the moon, and it was always Mattie who broke away from the dutiful nose-to-tail fire and scampered off alone. It was Mattie who found new foods to sample, scratching in the moss and the lichen along the path of the gardens and finding tiny insects. She nosed behind stones and brought out fat yellow slugs, centipedes and earthworms. Once she caught a moth and ate it, but the dust on its wings made her sneeze. Hedgehogs are insectivores, but they will eat any meaty creature which they can catch. They also eat a very small amount of vegetable matter, crunching things like leaves and stems of lilies and sometimes lettuce leaves. The small amount of damage that they do in the garden is more than outweighed by the pests which they destroy. After all, it is better to have a lettuce or two slightly torn than to lose a whole row of seedlings to slugs or snails, or to having a crop of broad beans ruined by black fly. The little hedgehogs hunted with their mother over 5 or 6 gardens, following her with their noses to the ground, so that they walked in her scent. They went the same way each night and learned to know the ground they covered by the pattern of the smells. Their mother taught them to walk with their snouts lowered and their bristles slightly raised. She taught them to freeze at any sudden noise, but if danger threatened from afar, they learnt to run and hide themselves under leaves or stand in the shadow of a rock or a clod of earth. At first, a sudden bright light would panic them, but their mother taught them to stand still until it had gone, and then to run into the shadows. They were still too young to curl themselves into a ball. They felt very defenceless. I will read a bit more in a minute, but I can only get 10 minutes, so bear with me.